Types of CSS. There are three types of CSS. Inline, internal and external CSS. Every type of CSS has its own advantage and disadvantage. The CSS we used here is called internal CSS. In internal CSS, the style of CSS is specified in the head section as we have done here. Internal CSS is used in the condition when we want a style to be used in a single web page. The internal CSS can be used to define unique CSS to a single HTML page. The advantage of internal CSS is that it does not require to create an external file for declaring the style, just like in external CSS. As we have seen the working of internal CSS, moving to next type of CSS, that is inline CSS. The inline CSS can be used to define unique CSS to a single HTML element in the web page. Whenever our requirements are very small, we can use inline CSS. The style attribute is added to the HTML element. The style attribute can contain any CSS property. The disadvantage of inline CSS that it must be specified on every HTML element, which is time consuming, so use it when your need is small. Let's see an example. Delete all the internal CSS and HTML elements and let us apply inline CSS to some HTML elements. Look, we have successfully applied inline CSS, but here I will have to give style to every HTML element individually, which is very time consuming. Therefore, use it wisely. Moving to the last and most important type of CSS, which is external CSS. An external CSS is a separate style file with an .css extension. This external CSS file should have reference in the head section inside the link element of every HTML page where the external CSS is to be used. The idea of external CSS is to change the style of multiple HTML files by making use of only one CSS file. Let's create an external CSS. Earlier, I installed an extension called Live Sauce Compiler. Now this extension is most useful here. Make sure you have turned on the extension before saving the SCSS file. In the bottom you will see a button named as Watch My Sauce. Click on it and turn on the extension. Create a file with any name with SCSS extension. In normal CSS file we cannot declare variable or constant, but using this extension now we can. Let me show you how. First I am going to declare two variables. One will store the font size for paragraph and another variable which will store font size for h2 tag. After this I will declare my class as we have done earlier and use the above declared variable to provide the font size to paragraph and h2 tag. Now save the file. When you save it, two more files will be generated, one will with CSS extension and the other one is with map extension. We need to focus on CSS extension file that was created. Don't edit or delete the map extension file. Now in the head section of the HTML file, use the link element to give reference of the external CSS file that we created. Rel stands for relation, which is style sheet, and href is location of the file where it resides. Link the CSS file and not the SCSS or map file. Now in the body, delete the HTML elements that we used earlier. Define a paragraph and assign the class that we created in the external CSS. Define a h2 and add some content. Let's see the output. Great. Please note that whenever you want to edit your styling, change the style in the SCSS file and not in the generated CSS file. Now let's change the font size declared in the variable and add some font color. We have successfully implemented the external CSS. We have used SCSS style not just for declaring variable, but you will come to know more feature of SCSS in upcoming tutorials ahead. Trust me, you will be amazed to see the time-saving features of SCSS.